Kakadosh, Boker Or, Shevuot Tov, Masechet Shevuot Daf Yomi. Right, we are on Daf Yomi Daf 10a1. You remember we were talking about that we made a Hekesh. Obviously, you can't make everything into a Hekesh, right? But certain things, there's going to be a Hekesh. So he says there's going to be a Hekesh, right, between one thing and another thing. So what does it say over here? We said that the comes out that there's a Hekesh between Sireh Haregalim to Sireh Rashi Chodashim, meaning there's going to be a Hekesh between the Sireh, right, of the Regalim. Obviously, we're talking about Shalosh Regalim used to bring a he-goat. Okay. And that was a cash to the, right, to the, what else? You have the seed of Regalim and seed of Rosh Chodashim. Masir de Rosh Chodesh, just like the seed of Rosh Chodesh. B'minta de Kodesh Mechapre, which means that we find that by Rosh Chodashim, right, which is going to be Mechaper, it's going to atone to do with the Achilat Kodshim, which means that if a person was Tahor and he ate Kodshim Tmeim, so therefore it's going to be Mechaper. That is the seed of Rosh Chodesh, right? So too the Seireh Regalim, the Minta de Kodesh Mechapre. So too the Seireh Regalim, which was not explained on which sin, right, was it explained for. It's also going to do the same thing, which means it's going to be Mechaper on Tum'ah to do with the Achilat Kodshim. Now, V'chitem, and now you're going to tell me Mechapru ad Rosh Chodesh, right? That it basically should also be Mechaper on Rosh Chodesh, which is going to be on the Tahor, the 8 Kodshim Tmein. Ha'amninan, you already told me, Otano Seavon, then Acher no Seavon. Meaning that it's designated specifically that the Seir of Rosh Chodesh is going to be Mitaher and not something else. You remember we said that it could only be Mitaher for one thing. It can't do it for two things. So the same thing, it could not be doing it for two things. It's only doing it for one thing, right? Ve'ota, this is going to atone. Dafka ota, it, right? Which means that it is going to atone and not anything else. Okay? So says the Gemara, right? V'chitem, and now you're going to tell me, right? Nichapru ad Yom Kippurim, which means the Sira Regalim should be mechaper on the sin of Yom Kippurim, which means that just like we know that Tumah Mikdash HaKadoshav, that you do not have Yediyah B'tchila, but you do have Yediyah B'sof, which means this. What happens if you didn't know about the Tumah at the beginning? But at the end, somebody came to you and told you, by the way, do you not realize he just became Tameh? He said, what, Bemet? When? No, this and this date. Really? And that means you went into the Beit HaMikdash when you were Tameh. That's called En lo Yediyah lo B'tchila, aval yesh lo Yediyah B'sof. You don't have Yediyah at the beginning, but Yediyah means knowledge. You didn't have knowledge of the fact at the beginning, but you do have knowledge of the fact at the end. So he says, yeah.
Better word is awareness.
Awareness. So he says not like this. He says, Ha'amrinan, we actually said, Achab Bashana. What does it mean, Achab Bashana? Kapara zo, the kapara of the Seir Pnimi, is only going to be once a year. What does it mean once a year? Meaning that there's no other korban which is going to atone like the korban of the Seir Pnimi. Remember, Seir Pnimi is the inner korban which was inside the Hechal on Yom Kippur. Remember that on Kippur, you had the inner korban, which is called the Seir Pnimi. Pnimi means like bifnim, like, like in the inside. And then you got the Seir, which is going to be on the outside, on the outer Mizbeach. Okay? So says the Gemara, so am I mechapre? Why is it going to be mechaper? So what is it going to be mechaper, the Seir Regalim? So he says, so if you're going to tell me that you had awareness at the beginning and the end, the high bar korbanu, he says, it's not true. He says, because this avon, right, you do need a korban. You need korban olev yored. Meaning, if you already knew that you were tameh and you did this and you had the idea, so therefore, what are you relying upon some korban of a kohen gadol of seira pnimi, seira chitzon, seira regalim? You have to bring your own korban. Mm-hmm. You know about it. If you knew about it, what are you relying upon now? Some other korban that somebody's going to do. You have to do it yourself, right? Some people, they love doing that. They throw everything on somebody else, right? They have to do it themselves. Yeah? So he says, what about if you had the awareness at the beginning, but you didn't have the awareness at the end? Meaning at the beginning, you knew you were tameh, and then you forgot, and then you didn't even realize afterwards either. So therefore, you had the awareness at the beginning, but you didn't have it in the end. So he said, says that's a seed which is done on the inside. So if it's not the seed of regalim, You're going to tell me that you didn't know at the beginning, you didn't know at the end. That was a seed which was done on the outside of Yom Kippurim mechapel. So therefore, you're forced to say, "Eno mechapel al she'em b'yediah lo tchiyah b'sof." That means you're forced to say that it's only going to be. That means the Seir Regalim is going to atone for something if you didn't have Yediah, not at the beginning and not at the end. Yeah. So one more time, you had three different Seirs. You had Seir and Seir Pnimi, Seir Chitzoni. That means the inner one, the outer one, and Regalim. Regalim Shalosh Regalim. Pesach Shavuot Sukkot. So one more time.
This suspends until one day maybe you'll remember, and then you'll bring it toward you.
Yes, that's something else. You're right.
It doesn't atone.
100%. 100%. Yes, exactly. He's correct.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Look at you. You're not a baked potato after all.
After we just did that chart, it says like this. We start with the next part. Rabbi Meir Omer. Rabbi Meir says, Kol hasirim kaparatan shaveh. Kapara. Yeah, you heard? Kapara shali. He's like, my para. Yeah, he says, basically what happens is that according to Shittat Rabbi Meir, all of them are the same atonement. Whether it's going to be Sira Regalim, Sira Rosh Chodesh, Sira Chitzon of Kippur, all the same. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, it says, what's the reasoning of Rabbi Meir? He says, the Pasuk says, Seir Usir. There's a hekesh between all the Sirim. The Vav Mosif al Nyan Rishon. The Vav always adds on the previous thing before. So I would have thought to say that each one learns from each other. Rabbi Yochanan says, Kol Torah Kula Medin, right? Lamed milamed. Which means that this. Usually in the entire Torah, you can learn one thing from another thing, and then you can learn on another thing, which means I could have a copy, a photocopy of a photocopy and continue going. So I learn one from another, and then this one that you learn to another thing, and then you continue going. You could do that, like one thing to another, until you continue going. It's like a ball that just continues rolling. So he says, but on coaching, you don't do that. Meaning that the second that we're talking about coaching, which anything has to do with korbanot or things like that, you can't just. So, for example, right, Davar Alamed, they learn from a kesh from Seir Rosh Chodesh. So, how do you learn now from the Seir Rosh Chodesh to something else? Yeah. So he says, Halakash, it's not a question. Kulu mikama gamre. All the Seirim, they learn it from the first one, from the Seir Rosh Chodesh. It's not that you're learning, for example, the one of Kippur from Seir Rosh Chodesh, and then the one of the Regalim from the one of Kippur, and then the one, because then that's like a photocopy of a code photocopy. They're all learning it from the original photocopy, meaning that they're all certified copies coming from the original. It's not, which is the Rosh Chodesh. I mean, they're all learning from the Rosh Chodesh. So it's not that you learn from the Rosh Chodesh, let's say Regalim, and then you learn the one of Kippur from Rosh Chodesh, from the Regalim, and then no. Everything the Azazel is a completely different story. It's not even here. Remember, the Azazel was never here. It was always Seir Pnimi, Seir Chitzoni, Regalim, Rosh Chodesh, and that's it. The Seir La'azazel is a completely different concept. Everything's learning from Rosh Chodesh. Okay? So Tenach, I understand, Kol Dichtiv, anytime that it's going to be written Usir. Atzeret Yom Kippurim, it's not written Usir. So how do you know that then? Atzeret is Shavuot, and Yom Kippurim, it's not written Usir. So Rabbi Yonah, but rather Rabbi Yonah says, Amar Kal, the Pasuk says, Elu ta'asu la'Hashem moadechem, ukshu kol ha'moadim kulan ze bezeh. When it says these words, that these are the moadim that you're going to have for Hashem, there's a hekesh. You know what a hekesh is? You're making a hekesh, juxtaposition, all the muadim one to another. Okay, and therefore you're connecting everything to the Rosh Chodesh. So ask the Gemara, Rosh Chodesh la moed. He says, what are you talking about? Rosh Chodesh is not a moed. What are muadim? Pesach, Shavuot, Sukkot, not Rosh Chodesh. Rosh Chodesh is not a moed. You don't call it Chol Moed. You don't call it moed at all. So how are you learning a kilu? You're making a hekesh, all the muadim to each other. Rosh Chodesh is not a moed. So says the Gemara, Ibra, Rosh Chodesh nami kramen. It is called a moed. Kedamar Abaye, just like Abaye says, oh, the Rosh Chodesh you don't bring. So he says, right? He says Rosh Chodesh now also is called a moed. Why? Like Abaye says, Damar Abaye, Tammuz daishata, right? Tammuz of that year that they sent the Meraglim, Maluye Malyuha. It was a full month of Tammuz, meaning like this. Tichtiv, Karailai Moed Lishmor Bachurai. Usually in the Hebrew calendar, it's very similar to the English, right? But a little bit different. Remember that in the English, twice a year, you have 2 months in a row full. 2 months. 2 mois pour an maleh. That's full. How do you have 2 months full? December and January both have 31. July and August both have 31. So let's start. January is maleh. February is chaser, but the real chaser, right? It's lacking. So it's 28 days or 29 in a leap year, but it's lacking, right? January, February, March. March is always 31 days. April is 30, right? May, 31 days. June, lacking, right? July and August, since they're both on the knuckles, so they both have 31.
What do you mean on the knuckle?
January, full. February, lacking. March, full. April, lacking.
I love this.
January, February, March, April, full. May, lacking. July and August, because you're starting again, they're both on the knuckles, so they're both full.
In mnemonic, you learned it.
Mnemonic. Yes, we learned it in the elementary school, right? So, right, that's July, August. September is lacking. October is full. November is lacking. December is full. Okay, so now what happens is like this, right? So the twice a year you have 2 months full, one after another. December and January, or unless you're going to just call that it's a new year, but you have July, August. Okay, fine. In the Hebrew months, usually it's also almost very similar, which means usually they start from Tu B'Shvat, but technically you could start from Nisan as well. Okay, so therefore you start from Shvat, Tu B'Shvat. Whenever you have a holiday on Tetvav, it's always a full month. So Tu B'Shvat, 2 of Nisan, 2 is Tetvav, 15. So you have Tu B'Shvat, the 15th of Shvat, 15th of Nisan, which is Pesach, 15th of no, it was Pesach Sheni is not a holiday like Tu B'Shvat. And Pesach Sheni is Yudalit, by the way, not Tetvav. Of course, Pesach Sheni is Yudalit. They brought the Korban Pesach Yudalit. Tetvav was Pesach. You have Sukkot, and then you have Tu B'Av. So what do? You start, let's pretend from Nisan. Nisan is Maleh. It's 15th of Tishri. Yeah, so one more time. You have Nisan. Nisan is Maleh, full month. Iyar, lacking, 29 days. Sivan, full, right? Why? Because it's got Shevuot. It's a king. So again, it's a full month. Tammuz is lacking. Av should be a full month. Elul is lacking, right? It's got 29 days. Tishri is full month, right? Once it gets to Cheshvan, Kislev, Tevet, there it's a little bit of back and forth, right? And then again, you're starting at again. What?
Why it's not from Tu B'Shvat?
That's why, because Tu B'Shvat, Shvat is Maleh and Adar is Chased. The ones of Kislev and Tevet, sometimes you have some years that one is Maleh, one is Chased, one is Chased. Sorry, one is Maleh, and sometimes they're both Maleh, sometimes they're both Chased. It's meaning that it plays around. Thank you. It's okay. You understand?
But if you're gonna start from Nisan,
yeah, but I don't know why they start Dafka from Shvat and then they continue going. Because the end of the year is always the changes. Those two. So now, according to what I just told you, though, what happens in the month of Tammuz? Tammuz is always lacking. Meaning, whenever you look in the Hebrew calendar, right, Nisan will always have 30 days. By the way, you know what the nafkamina of 30 days is? No, how many days of Rosh Chodesh do you have? Because whenever you have a 30-day month, it's always 2 days of Rosh Chodesh, the 30th and the 1st of the next month, right? Lamed and then Aleph, right? So therefore, right, Nisan is always a full month. Tammuz, right? Well, this is right before Tisha B'Av, right? The Teshivah Asar B'Tammuz, right? The 17th of Tammuz, the fast day in the 3 weeks. So that month of Tammuz is always lacking. However, though, in the desert, when they had the sin of the Meraglim, of the spies, that year Tammuz was full. Tammuz had 30 days, unlike every other year that it's always 29 days. Now, there, when it says that it had 30 days, it's written in the Pasuk, Kara alai moed, HaKadosh Baruch Hu added an extra day, and he made it into Rosh Chodesh, and he called it a moed.
That's why we do Shabbat.
Exactly. So that way, that's why the Meraglim came back on the 8th of Av, and then on the 9th of Av in the nighttime, they started crying, and that's when everything started. Meaning, HaKadosh Baruch Hu purposely added a day so that we wouldn't come out on the 10th of Av. It came out on the 9th of Av, Tisha B'Av, right? Tisha B'Av. So therefore, but he called it a Mu'ed. What is a Mu'ed? Rosh Chodesh. Do you see from here that Rosh Chodesh is called, that's why we could do a Kesh, because it's called a Mu'ed. Okay? Next, Amr Rabbi Yochanan says, "Modeh Rabbi Meir b'seira nasa b'ifnim shehu eno mechaper kaparatan." He says we're going to be modeh, right? Rabbi Meir is going to be modeh with a sair which is going to be doing on the inside that it's not going to be mechaper kaparatan. Ve'eno mechaperin kaparato. Hu eno mechaper kaparatan. So he says kapara achat mechaper. Ve'eno mechaper shte kaparot. It's only going to be mechaper one kapara and not two kaparot. Yeah. So he says henen mechaperin kaparato. Amakra pasuk says achat bashana. Kapara zo lo te'el achat bashana. Meaning this kapara, there's no other kapara, there's no other korban like the seed apnimi. The seed apnimi is special. Yeah? Pass it down, please. The seed apnimi is special. Okay? Very good. Tanya Miyachi, we also learned in a Braita. Right? That means even though we just compared all the other kaparot together, whether it's going to be the one of Rosh Chodesh, or the one of the outer one, or the one of the Shalosh Regalim, the one of the seed apnimi, the inner one, is completely different. Right? It's completely different halacha. Okay. So he comes and he says like this. He says, right, as follows. Right? We just said now that we learned, Tanya Miyachi also learned in the Raita. על שם בידיעה לא בתחילה ולבסוף שם בידיעה בתחילה וישו בטבעי התואר שאכל את הקודש סירר את בסדר של חודשים והסעיר נעשה בחוץ מחפרים דברי רבי מאיר. These are the words of רבי מאיר. ואילו הסעיר נעשה בפנים Shaire, it also left it out. The Kapratan Nami Shaire, so it also left it out, which means like this. Even in Shitat Rabbi Meir, remember that the inner Sa'id is different than everything else. Everything else is the same. But the inner Sa'id is going to be different. Fine, 2 dots. Hayar Rabbi Shimon Omer, Rabbi Shimon used to say, Sirer Shechodashim Mechaprim Al Tahor Shachal Et Tameh. According to Shitat Rabbi Shimon, Sirer Shechodashim would be Mechaper on a Tahor that ate the Tameh. Bishlama the Rashi Chodashim. I understand Rashi Chodashim no mechaper degalim is not going to be mechaper negalim. The Amar Krav, the pasuk says avon. Avon echad uno say it's going to carry one sin, and uno says shnei avonot not two. But the regalim should be mechaper on the one of Rashi Chodashim, which means this: is it a two-way street or a one-way street? Sireh regalim is obviously a higher level than Rosh Chodesh, because regalim is shalosh regalim. It's a higher level than Rosh Chodesh. So therefore, he comes and he says this: I understand that the Rosh Chodesh is not going to be mechaper on the Shalosh Regalim. But maybe the Shalosh Regalim should be Mechaper on the Rosh Chodesh. That's the question. Right? So Amar Kar, the Pasuk says, Ve'ota, it, otano se'avon, meaning one does not atone for each other. Each one is separate. So the one of Rosh Chodesh does not atone for Regalim, the one of Regalim does not atone for Rosh Chodesh. So Bishma Regalim lo Mechaprim avon de Yom Kippurim. I also understand that Sivire Regalim is not going to be Mechaper on Regalim, because it says in the Pasuk, Achabashana, meaning the one of Yom Kippur is special, right? Because it's once a year. It's once a year. Yom Kippurim, but the one of Kippur should be mechaper on the one of the Shalosh Regalim. So the Pasuk says also no. The one of Yom Kippur is only mechaper one, not twice, not more than twice. Meaning that the one of Kippur can only be atoned for one thing. It cannot be atoned for everything else. So the one of Kippur does not atone also for the Shalosh Regalim. Okay? Meaning we thought that it could be used for the same medicine. That you could use the same medicine for a few different things, and it's not true. Meaning, not only can you not use the one of Kippur, right? Sorry, not only can you not use the one of the Shalosh Regalim for Kippur, right? Because it says Echad B'Shana, but even the one of Kippur I cannot use for the other one as well. That means each one is designated for its own entity. So the Haki Achat B'Seir and Asabi Fnimud, it says 1 second. When it says the word Achat, that's only on the Seir Pnimi, it's not on the Seir Chitzon. Meaning, this would be good if it was written on the Seir Chitzon, the outer Korban of Kippur, and then I'm applying it to everything else. This is only written on the inner one. So you're right, the inner one is special. It's different than everything else, but not the outer one. So Amarkar, the Pasuk says, Milevad. The Seir Chitzon is brought Milevad. What does it mean Milevad? Right? The Fyoda Mubet. Milevad Chatat Kippurim ve'yitkush Chitzon Aprimi. So I'm making a kesh, a juxtaposition between the outer one and the inner one. Just like the inner one is special, that it does not atone for anything else other than what the inner one is. Meaning the inner one is a special thing. According to everybody, always the inner one was different than the outer ones. Right? So he says, so too the outer one, according to Shitat Rabbi Shimon, was also a kesh. And therefore the outer one is like the inner one, that it does not atone. You cannot go back and forth on the different shitot. Okay? Fine. Next, 2 dots. Yoda Mubet, 10b. The 2 dots says, Rabbi Shimon ben Yehuda Omer Bishmo. Rabbi Shimon ben Yehuda comes and he says in the name of Rabbi Shimon. We're talking about Sirei Shech Chodashim are going to be Mechaprim al Tahor Shachal Tatameh. Right? And then you're going to add on to it the Regalim Mechaprim al Tahor Shachal Tatameh, also in Tumah Mikdash Vekadoshav, that you didn't have Yediyah Lo B'tchila Lo Sof, and then you also had the Sirei Chatzot, which is, okay, fine. So you have Rabbi Shimon and the name of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. This is another chart now. So my Shna, the Shech Chodashim, the Lo Mechaprei ad Regalim. Why is it that the one of Rosh Chodesh is not going to be mechaper on the regalim? Tamar Krabas, the pasuk says avon, avon echad. Yeah, he says unose ve'eno nose shne avonot. The regalim nami lo nechaper the Rosh Chodeshim. So to the one of the shalosh regalim should not be mechaper on the shalosh on the Rosh Chodesh, but it says ve'ota it ota unose avon ve'nose avon acher ota lo mashmale. So he says he doesn't learn this ota that it. I wanted to make like a limitation. The limitation was I gave it to it and not for something else. He doesn't learn that. So if he doesn't learn that, I could say that it's going to be that the Shalosh Regalim is going to be mechaper for Rosh Chodesh. Because the Shalosh Regalim is a higher level. So for anything which is a higher level could be a tone for the one which is below it. You understood? Meaning it's like an inclusive package. Right? The fact that right, why? Because if I got a higher package, everything else is included. You continue going up. It's like a bundle, right? You continue going up, so everything else underneath is going to be included. You send the next one, doctor? Which one was that? Rabbi Shimon? No, Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Shimon. Okay, fine. What about now we need Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai? Right? So he says now, why is it that the Shalosh Regalim is not going to be Mechaper on Kippur? But the Pasuk says, it's once a year. So the once a year is a special deen. So he says, kapara zo, right? Lo te'el apam shana. He says, this kapara is only once a year. Yahachi, if so, Yom Kippur yunami lo nechapro ad regalim. The one of Kippur should also not be mechaper on regalim, because it says achat, right? So he says, kapara achat mechaper, ve'no mechaper shte kaparot. So he says, achat lo mashmele. According to him, he doesn't hold of this achat also. So therefore, you could say that it is going to be mechaper, meaning the one of Kippur is going to be mechaper the ones below it. Remember, according to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, it's all inclusive. Take the chart, or the doctor will give it to us now, but look on 2b. You put it there last week. Okay, very good. So you have it on the chat on last week. If you look on the bottom of the chart, right, which is the Seid of Rosh Chodesh, it's on Tahor that eats an Ochel. Very good. Chazak Uruch. He says, according to Shira Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, the Tahor who ate Tameh, that is the bottom one. Go on up above, concealment, and Tahor who ate Tameh. Go one above, concealment awareness, and concealment, and then Tahor who ate Tameh. Meaning every time that you go up, it's an all-inclusive. It includes everything which is below it. Okay? So says the Gemara, my why? He says, Ktiv achat, b'seir nasa ktiv bifnim ktiv. It's written achat in the seed which is done on the inside. Yachiv so the regalim nami lechapro di mikpurim. So then the shalosh regalim should be mechaper on Kippur. Because when it's written achat, it's the inner seed. So he says, no. Leolam achat mashmale. He does learn the word achat. But shane hacha, it's different over here. Damarkar, the pasuk says, Yechiper Aaron karnotav acha b'shana. Karnotav the mizbeach hapenimi. It's tavka the karnot on the inner mizbeach. The karnot is the horns of the inner mizbeach. So he says the chapara acha mechaper ve'no mechaper shte kaparot. That it's only going to be mechaper one kapara and not two. So he says the chitzon is a filu shte kaparot. Meaning the inner one is only going to be atoning for one thing. The outer one could atone for more. Okay, everyone clear until here? That was Shitat Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Now we're going back to a new topic. Amar Ula Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Says Ula in the name of Yochanan. Timidin shelo tzechul letzibur. When you have different kivasim which were acquired through Ekdesh for korbanot tamid, and they were left over at the end of the year. Right? Because again, they're not able to be brought in the new year. So niftin, right? You're going to redeem them when they're still tamimim. And you don't even have to wait until it gets a blemish to get a mum. Okay? So you just redeem them and then that's it. And then you have the money and then you could now use it for a new korban for the next year. So it says again, so Rabbi was sitting and he said this over. So Elmaleh Rav Chassa says Rav Chassa, Man tzait lecha or Rabbi Yochanan Rabba. Who's going to listen to you and Rabbi Yochanan, your rabbi? Where did the kedusha go? Meaning, we know that when you have a behema which is kadosh, right, and it's kedushat aguf, it's not going to be redeemed unless it has a mum. If it has a blemish, now you could redeem it. But before a blemish, it doesn't. So you redeemed it. Where's the blemish? Where is it? Where how does it work? So Elmaleh, he says, he says what? You're going to say it's not logical? That we're not going to say kedusha sheben lechadancha. That what? The word is the kedusha go. We learned in the Mishnah. Motara ketoret, leftovers of the ketoret. Mayo simba. What would they do with it? Hayuma frishin. They used to come and separate it, the money from the trumat alishka, the schara umanim, the rewards, the salaries, right? And then they used to give it to them with their reward. Yeah, and therefore used to go b'chulin. Mechalinota al maot haumanin. And then they used to come and they used to redeem it on the money of the chulin. And then they used to give it to them with their wages. Then they used to take it from the Tumah Chadashah, which means that they used to actually come and it was, even though it was already mugdeshet and everything, right? That they used to come and they used to redeem it. Now, why? Say the same thing you saw. Where did the Kiddusha go? Meaning, we used to do like a whole, how do you call this? Like a whole, so basically like this, right? How was it done? It was done as follows. Imagine right now, I'm owed money from the Bet HaMikdash. You're going to have to pay me a salary. Now, I have ketoret, which I cannot roll over. I cannot reuse. So what do? What I do is I take money from the Bet HaMikdash and I pay me my salary. So let's say it's $100. They give me the $100. Very good. Now what we do is that by becoming and giving it to me, now this is not holy money anymore, right? Because they deconsecrated it. Now what happens is I come and I buy the ketoret from you. Meaning the Bet HaMikdash had ketoret, but now they can't use this ketoret. It's old ketoret. So what do? They used to come and with their money buy the ketoret. By buying the ketoret, now the ketoret belongs to who? To the workers, because they just bought it.
What are they going to do with it?
1 second. They cannot do anything really with the ketoret. So now the Bet HaMikdash comes and they use the new money to repurchase the ketoret. Now that the ketoret is purchased with the new money, they could use it in the new year. And now the salary, now they have regular money. So they can roll over, but only if they do this entire thing. It's a trick. Now the question though is, it's a loophole. Now the question though is, 1 second, where did the Kiddusha go? Meaning, just like you asked this question to do with the korbanot, with the animals, that there was no blemish in the animals and you redeemed it and you did this whole thing. And then we asked, where did the Kiddusha go? Where did it disappear? The holiness, where did it disappear? So too, you have the same thing with the Ketoret. Right? Where did the Kiddusha go? So Elmaleh, he says, Ketoret kamarta. You said, well, you're asking me a question from Ketoret. Shane Ketoret is different to Kiddushat Damimhu, because there's only Kiddushat Damim and not Kiddushat Aguf. Meaning like this, when you have a korban, the actual body of the korban is Kiddushat Aguf. Kiddusha on the body. The Ketoret is not Kiddusha in the body. It's only Kiddush in money.
No physical.
So there's no physical. So therefore, you could come and you could do this entire trick. I mean, you could do this entire switch and substitution. You cannot do it for korban. So that's why you can't come and ask from one to another.